So thank you everyone for coming, and especially thank you to the panelists for whatever that was. We are live. For coming today. We really appreciate having everyone here. So this is Ohio Archaeology Month, and we are also celebrating at the same time 30 years of the Ohio University Archaeological Field School. And so it's a pretty special year and it's a pretty special occasion. And sitting with me are 5 people who have been involved with the archaeology program here at Ohio University in the past. And I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves one by one and explain what it is that you do currently. And what year you graduated also.
I'm Tatiana Fox. I graduated in 2014. I worked on Patton's Cave, was the field school that I did, but I still come to visit every year and scare the children, as Paul calls it. I've been working in private sector archaeology, which is also cultural resource management, for over 2 years, and I've worked for 3 companies so far in 5 states. I'm about to go to a 6th state. So we do everything from initial phase 1, 15-meter grid survey, to phase 2, sampling excavation, to phase 3, full-on excavation. And mostly I've been in West Virginia for the last year and a half. But yeah.
I'm Josh McConaughey, and I graduated in 2006, which is a decade ago. And shortly after I graduated, I started working for the Archaeological Conservancy. I am the Associate Director of the Midwest Regional Office, which is a fancy way of saying that I try to preserve archaeological sites. So we're a nonprofit organization that buys land that contains important archaeological sites all over the country, and we preserve them to make sure that they are here for the future, so that students running field schools and professional archaeologists have sites to dig, because so much has been lost already. And my Midwest office is in Columbus, so it's always fun to come back down to Athens and revisit the field school. I worked on Facing Monday Creek Rock Shelter, which I still think we need to rename that site. It's just,
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. So that was, a really exciting experience for me as a student, and it really, helped me kind of get started into the world of archaeology.
My name is Stacy Spertzel Fleck. I work for a private consulting firm in central Pennsylvania called Heberling Associates. I was a student here in 2000. I started in 2003 and finished my undergrad in 2004, and then went on to the graduate program in environmental archaeology and worked on the Facing Monday Creek Rock Shelter also. And so I've been working in CRM. I worked for the Monongahela National Forest for 4 years. I've also worked for the West Virginia State Historic Preservation Office for a year. Then I went back to CRM, and I've been with Heberling for 8 years now, and I'm probably going to continue to stay.
I am Basia Howard. I graduated in 2011. I worked on the Patton 3 site. Currently, I am one of 2 federal archaeologists with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Utility Services in Washington, D.C. And what we do is we provide loan and grant projects for rural communities to do infrastructure development for water, wastewater, electric, and telecom sites. So I am on part of the environmental and engineering review team. So we review the loan environmental packages to make sure that our projects are in compliance with Section 106, and we're doing the proper mitigation for any historic properties that may be found.
I'm Adam Wellspring. I went to the 2006 field school in Paul's grandparents' yard. I graduated in 2006 as well, and then I started doing cultural resource management. I worked for a company called AECOM in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been there for November 1st will be 10 years, so I'm old. But yeah, you guys know what cultural resource management is, so that's what I do.
So we have a pretty good mix of folks that have worked in private sector as well as public sector, nonprofit, and so we're going to hopefully have plenty of questions from folks sitting here. But before we get there, one of the things that I was hoping that each of you would be willing to talk about is, one, how the program here at Ohio University helped you to get your start and really proved beneficial to you as you pursued your careers. But the other side of that I really would like you to also speak to is that looking back on your careers, where you're at now, since leaving the program here at OU, if you were to be able to go back in time and give yourself some piece of advice while you were here, what would that piece of advice be? And so whoever would like to speak to that first.
Okay, fine, I guess I'll do it. Wait, so the first question was like, how has it helped us? Okay,
yeah.
So actually, literally, like everybody I've talked to does not have a field school that's as awesome as this field school. Like, we got to do full-on phase 3, and then also my year, we spent a good portion of the time processing our data in the lab, which is like something that I didn't know was going to be like really important in the field later, but it has been, just because it gives you like a context for like what you're pulling out of the ground. Like, a lot of the people I work with, like, they can identify lithics just as well as me, but like they have like no way to tell like typology, like when they're from, what they're made of, like where does this chert that this is made of like outcrop from, because like all those things have implications for like trade routes, or like was this traded in here, or was this made of local chert, because then it's like utilitarian, like who cares, but like just also with you berating people for like for like making sure things are done correctly, like perfect walls, perfect floors, making sure things are done like in a timely manner, because in CRM like that's like a thing, because like we're not like, it's not like academic archaeology where it's like autonomous and you can do whatever you want, blah blah blah. We have time limits, we have budgets, we have to get this amount of stuff done in a day. So the pacing that we learn is important, and having a thick skin is important. And yeah, I don't know. I've just had a lot of people I've worked with have gone to Europe for field schools that are still like less stuff than we do here. So, and then I guess if I could like give myself a piece of advice from when I was in school, I don't know, to be honest with you, like, because I feel like you really prepared me. and also Paul like helped me get my first job with ASC Group, who also gave me my first like crew chiefing position, which was like a whole different ordeal. But yeah, to be honest, I just wish somebody would have told me how to change a tampon in the woods. Like
I've actually been asked.
Changing tampons 101, is that a new course?
No, like your hands are dirty, everything's dirty, like it's terrible.
This is never a question that anyone has ever asked.
How do you follow this?
Sorry, I've been like in the woods too long. You can't like bring me out in public anymore.
So I'll talk next, because I think that my experience professionally is probably way different than most of you guys, because I really don't, in an everyday aspect, use archaeology the way that we learned archaeology in field school. Because the majority of my job is more, it's kind of boring. It's land acquisition, but I'm acquiring archaeological sites. So I think that the big thing that actually having a great field school did is kind of give me a general idea of archaeology, not just for Ohio, but because I work in such a big Midwestern area, and a general understanding of all different kinds of sites. And I think the field school did that, but also our anthropology and archaeology program in general is very well-rounded here at OU. We have people from all different kinds of backgrounds teaching you a lot of different things. You know, Elliot I never had the pleasure of having Paul as a professor, but you know, Elliot's background is really diverse within archaeology, and Anne's as well. And so I think that is really helpful. And like I said, just being able to understand, because I talk to archaeologists all the time about sites, so having that understanding of what's going on at sites is really helpful in my everyday job. I'm gonna skip the whole "what would you tell your previous self" thing because
I ruined it.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Anyway.
Well, I think I need to take a step back because when I came to OU, came as a transfer student from Hocking College, and Hocking College had a 2-year program in archaeology. So my first field school was at Hocking College, and it was a CRM-based field school. So we had experience with phase 1 and full excavation, moving around to different sites in Ohio. It was all in central and around Nelsonville, Ohio. And so, I had some classes there that I didn't actually take here, but when I did start at OU, I feel like what I was missing from Hocking was more of the theoretical classes, and I gained that from here. I think that some of the classes that I remember the most was like the seminars in Ohio Valley archaeology. Those were some of the, I think the most valuable. Also, I took a lot of classes from the geology department, and so the geomorphology classes and the soils classes there, I found those to be really, really helpful in the field, once I was working in the field. And the other thing, this is some advice I would give students now, is I think you should get experience as soon as you can. I worked in the field for a year between Hocking and starting here. So I had, I pretty much knew at that point I wanted to continue in archaeology, and I think the classes made more sense to me at that point. And then I continued to work through every summer, every break, Christmas break. A lot of it was because I had to pay for school. But the experience from that really combined with being a student, is invaluable. And so, I was involved with the Facing Monday Creek Rock Shelter, that field school as well. Not as a student, though. I was basically a grad student at that point, showing up on a part-time basis. I was actually working for the Forest Service at that point, doing rock shelter surveys in southern West Virginia. And so I was doing that 8 days a week, and then I would drive back, and all my days off, I was helping out with the field school. And I think what I learned, I think that what OU gave me was the ability to do research more. I think that, that's really important. And you need to know where, to find what you're looking for, because you're always going to be learning, you're always going to be problem solving, and you have to know where to find the answers, because you don't always have somebody to ask. But, and as far as further advice for myself or you guys now, I would say that as soon as you can, start working and work with somebody that you can absorb all the information they're giving you, and you'll just ask questions and get as much as you can out of it. Because people, if you show an interest, they're going to share with you, and they're going to teach you, and that's how it continues, both in school and afterwards. So. Go ahead.
I would say attention to detail is very important, and integrity in your work, because you can't just blow through the side. You're like, we could just scrape a couple layers off real quick, but you have to take your time to see, what the site is actually trying to tell you, and interpretation as it comes to landforms, and trying to figure out where may be the best place for maybe like a short-term habitation site versus long-term. And definitely, I would say, if I could say something to my younger self, one, internship or get experience as soon as you can, because it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. If you have no experience, it really doesn't mean anything out in the real world. I'm also thankful for the exposure of knowing like what CRM and things are, because I do public anthropology and archaeology now. So coming in, my idea and perspective of archaeology was very limited. So if you would tell me now that I would be working mostly in North American archaeology or more historical archaeology, I'd be like, no, that's crazy. So I'm very thankful that I did the field school, because I understand North American archaeology a lot more. So when I'm reading these reports and things, it's like, okay, see, I'm glad that I have that experience and I didn't go off to Europe and do archaeology, because I'd come back and be completely confused. And also do geology course if you can, because soils are very important, because in the work that I do, since we're doing construction and infrastructure projects, oftentimes some of the material that I get might be a geotechnical report from an engineering firm. And it's just like, what are you trying to say to me? Like, yes, there are these different soils, but I never really took the time to invest to learn all of the different details and the breakdowns and the hydric soils and all these other things. So try to get as much cross-field exposure as you can, and learn skills and methods like GIS or things like that that might be really beneficial to your future career path. And that's what I got.
My heart just sank because that's what I was going to say. As far as the field school, it was 10 years ago, so I don't really remember that much of it, to be honest with you. I do remember one thing that sticks out to me is obviously it gave me all the skills to pursue a career in private archaeology, but throwing dirt with the shovel through the to a screen, that's one of sticks out in my mind. Every time I do it, I think about the time that we did it in the field school. But yeah, as far as what I would tell myself, I would tell myself to go to class. 'Cause I didn't really, you probably don't even remember me, I never went to class. It would be, as what my colleague here said, is cross-discipline. GIS and CRM is, GIS is everything. So, I mean, if you can get a double major in GIS and anthropology, you're probably going to be, if you want to make a career out of it, you're going to be in a good spot. But and then geomorphology is a big thing too, and identifying soils. And then I would say if you if you're wanting to get into it, it's going to be a lot of pipelines. So it's going to be a lot of walking up and down mountains, and it's going to be a lot of brush, thick woods, cornfields, pedestrian survey. It's not easy, but you can carve out a niche if you want to.
So before I ask any more questions, I'm wondering if anyone has questions for the panelists that they'd like to ask.
We can hear.
Knowing what you know now, what would you have us add to the program to make it better for future students?
I will go ahead and jump right on in on that. Definitely probably a course in Section 106, because that's, if you go out and do the CRM, that's like the biggest thing, and that's the greatest struggle in my life is people think that they're doing Section 106 right and they have the correct interpretation of 36 CFR Part 800, but they don't, and the correcting and the battling and the negotiation and who actually has the authority in certain situations. Because the agency that I work for, they didn't have a professional archaeologist for a while. So it became interpreted that the SHPO has all this power when they really don't. It's the federal agency's job to make the ultimate decision. So now I'm in all these power struggles because the SHPO's used to having all this power, and it's like, no, you're just the technical expert of the state, and we consult with you to get your information, but ultimately we make the final decision. So that's really important. Then NEPA is the environmental one, and people often get NEPA and Section 106 confused. Like, you're supposed to work to streamline them, but they are different processes. So
I would say it'd be sweet if there were like some courses that integrated geology with archaeology, like in context, because like almost the whole first year I was in the field, I was with a company that like they didn't really care much about geomorph. It was basically like, did it come out of the plow zone? Did it come out of subsoil? Like, because that's the context they cared about. And then when I got to the company I'm with now, Tetra Tech, it's like crazy geomorphology all the time. I had so much catching up to do. It was insane. And like it went from like at ASC, you could describe something as a silt clay, but at Tetra Tech, it has to be like subangular to blocky silt clay with hexagonal prisms that like go to concretious with depth. Like, and you like, if you don't have a class before that, you just have to pick all that up from listening to people like on the fly. And like taking a geology course would definitely be beneficial, but it'd be cooler if there was like something that integrated both of them so you could talk about like looking at a landform and like just like looking at the landscape and the topography of it and saying, well, that would be a great place for a site, or like there's clearly not a site here, or like obviously this was strip mined, or obviously this was logged 30 years ago, that kind of stuff.
That's a great idea, actually, yeah. I think, and this might be part of the course catalog right now. I really don't remember. But maybe just like practical applications of archaeology, like having students fill out state site forms.
Oh, God.
Just so, no, really, like,
No, that's a
because
good idea.
sometimes you read, you go through the state forms, and they're obviously filled out by people that have no idea what they're doing. And some of them are 60 years old, but other ones, so maybe not a whole course, but just like a section of study of how does this happen? Because if people are wanting to be active in the field of archaeology, they're going to have to do that at some point, or they should, So maybe that. I have another idea. I can't remember what I was going to say. And make sure you know how to read maps. I know it sounds really simple, but there's all kinds of different maps, whether they're soil maps or topography maps, and whatever aspect of archaeology that you're going to be in, that is definitely vital, Know which way is north.
Kind of a lot of what's being suggested here is actually what they were teaching at Hawking College, and because that program actually is no longer, it's I think ended a year ago or so. It'd be really great if OU could pick up from where they left off. We actually had classes where we went out and dug backhoe trenches on different landforms and described the soils. It was a Geo Archaeology class, not a geomorph class. It was combined with archaeology, and we had a Section 106 classes that were at the State Historic Preservation Office for the semester, and we learned a lot of those things. I think it's also important to learn how to evaluate sites for their significance. Mm-hmm. A lot of people really have no idea where to begin with that. And something that I had to pick up on that I was never taught in school was really just artifact curation. Every state has their own guidelines that you have to follow, but I don't know we did analysis, but we never really did the curation part as far as, I didn't know how to use a database really correctly. Microsoft Access, you have to know how to use it, absolutely. And, like I said, every state has their own guidelines. I'm currently having to learn how to use the National Park Service guidelines, which I never had to know before. So, there's those things, and it shouldn't all be CRM based because not everybody goes into CRM, like you were saying, but there are the basics. You have to know the soils. You have to know how to read a map. I mean, use a compass.
The practical applications.
The practical applications you have to know. But.
Maybe also
I think it's been covered.
Yeah, pretty much. We all agree.
And like I said, I know that the department is always evolving and you guys are always adding stuff.
Yeah.
Like, magnetometry and all of the new archaeological sciences, which is such a huge part of archaeology now. You know, digging is becoming less and less of a thing in archaeology. And I know when I look at like Jared Burke's maps of sites, I cannot interpret what those are at all. And you really have to learn what certain things are. So maybe that could be another like practical application of, you know, new technologies in archaeology and how those fit into the world now.
So like a summer field school and then a course that would be a methods course.
Yeah.
Right.
And even just like, I mean, I know that equipment is expensive, and Paul, you looked into getting stuff like that. But even if you just kind of like go over the basics of, yeah, we learned that you walk in a grid, you know, when you're doing a phase one, and if you're doing a you know, magnetometry survey, it's kind of the same idea. So it could just kind of be an aspect of that subject, I guess, that it's a different way to map out sites.
What other questions do folks have?
I just want to make a comment that's within Ohio. I was part of a conference about teaching archaeology in Columbus, and that was what you're expressing was exactly what all kinds of professors at Akron, at Toledo, you name it, were expressing the same tension. There's a real applied element to archaeology, like at Hawking used to be. But then there's more academic, culture area survey courses, questions about, you know, big processes in the human experience through time. And there's, in all of these programs, there's that tension between how many courses do you offer that are more technical versus how many courses do you offer that are more, in a sense, anthropological. And if you have 12 faculty members, it's covered.
It really does need to be a balance.
And Akron and OU and Toledo,
because
you just don't have the breadth of faculty to offer everything you would like to. You throw in statistics in archaeology, you throw in all of those things, and all of the CRM folks at the conference were saying universities need to teach more applied. And everyone in the academic side was reminding them we have to balance intro courses so that half of what we teach is intro courses, so that everybody gets a sense of what the human experience through time was. So it's what you're saying is exactly what other people are saying all over Ohio and probably the country, you know, which is all valid, completely valid.
And I think OU, the department here, does a really good job of covering the conceptual ideas of archaeology, which is I mean, there's no sense in knowing exactly how to dig up an artifact and map it and put it into a database if you can't figure out why it was there, and what the people that were using it were thinking when they were using it and why they were living in a place and stuff like that. So it's got to be a balance of both, you know. And I think that OU does a great job of that.
Other questions that folks have?
For the benefit of students here, what was your immediate post-graduation experience like? You get your diploma and then the next day there's no classes to go to. How do you become an archaeologist then?
I just went back to field school and did a second season with Paul until a big project started at ASC and then hopped on there. But if you're doing CRM, there's like literally just 2 websites that look like where you go find your jobs. And
Shovelbums.com.
Shovelbums.com and archaeology fieldwork. So yeah, I just like went back to field school to like gain a few more skills, do more of a like managerial kind of thing instead of like being a student. And it gave me like kind of filled out like my framework for like what to expect when I got to the field, even though like nothing actually prepares you for the field.
I think one of the most important things you can do is really networking with people, knowing people. Most jobs it's name dropping, honestly. A lot of it is you hire people that you know through other people. You ask around. We were already doing this morning. We hear about people on field crews with other people that we know, and it's really important to make friends with people and to get around to maybe changing jobs does help, because then you get to know more people in the region that you want to work in. Knowing people in government agencies along with private consulting firms is also really helpful.
It's also good to maintain a good reputation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's a very small world.
Yeah, CRM is like really social, real gossipy.
Yeah.
So like if you burn bridges with the company, 4 to 5 other companies are going to hear about it. If you're a terrible tech, everybody's going to know wherever you go. If you're a good tech, same thing.
And people also, if they went to the same field school that you did or the same school, it's assumed that you're going to be just as good of an employee as a worker, and that precedes you. So you're sort of going to follow the reputation of other people, and you're going to create that for the future students as well.
I had a very different experience post-graduation. I applied to a number of PhD programs and maybe a couple master's programs. Didn't get into any, so I was going out of school and I was like, okay, here's this year. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. It was really hard because it's like, can I really be an archaeologist? Because I didn't get into any schools and a lot of crushing. So I ended up in Vegas for a year hanging out with my dad. And
Playing the tables.
No, see, he's a pastor. So I was just
in Vegas?
Yeah.
I guess it's called Sin City for
Yeah,
a reason.
you gotta balance it out. But yeah, so working with the church it helped me think, like, what are my true passions? And it's like giving back and helping people. So I ended up going to Cleveland to do a master's in nonprofit administration and leadership. And I was like, I'll do this. I was gonna maybe do some type of international nonprofit, kind of tie in the Anthro. But I was like, I can't, even though it was really hard and crushing not getting to any schools, I was like, I gotta keep going for my dreams and maybe try it one more time. So I did. I applied to American University, University of Chicago, University of North Carolina, and Harvard, because I was just like, why not for kicks and giggles if I'm gonna throw it out there, Might as well go big or go home. And I didn't get into any of the PhD programs. And I was like, what am I going to do? But fortunately, American, they're like, hey, we can let you into our master's program. And then if you still decide that, you want to apply for the PhD in a year or two. And I was like, I'll do it. I was a little bit bitter about it. But I was like, if I have the master's degree, then I can still technically do what I want to do. And it's not over. I can always do that PhD run a third time maybe if I have it in me. But it was the best experience for me because I came in looking to do something in like hydrology or something like that. But just being in the program and taking the courses, it's just like, no, you got to get back to what's your core passion, so helping people. So then started to get swayed a little bit more towards the engaged or applied anthropology. And there's an article that I read by Shannon Doughty, I think, about clockwork anthropology or archaeology that really made me think, and I had to let go of all of these stereotypical notions that I had about what archaeology is. Because it was kind of like, why do we have so much passion and favor about the ruins of the classical era, but we can't see the beauty and the history of this rundown factory? It has a story too. And I was like, you're kind of making a point there, and I see. So that's where I just kind of did the turn, and now I am doing archaeology, but in a way I never thought I would. but I'm very happy doing it. So.
If I could jump in to this conversation now, for what you do after you graduate, you want to be a professional, be an archaeologist as a professional. The first thing you need to realize is that it's a business for the company you're working for and for yourself. Especially when you start off, if there's enough work, you'll have a lot of options to work, choose the jobs you want. And you need to choose the ones that fit your schedule, fit what you want out of archaeology the best. And just because a company hires you on a tech, that doesn't mean you're indebted to that company. Because as soon as that job's over, they're not thinking about you past giving you the paycheck and moving on to the next job. If they have something come up, and if you did a good job, they'll call you up. But if they don't have work, they're not going to keep you on. So don't just sit around and wait for a company to say, we have work, come work for us. If there's time off, find a job somewhere else. And then when I first started off, I jumped back and forth. I worked with Adam, and I worked at the company I work for now. I would, jump back and forth between one, and then the opportunity came where I was given a more permanent position where I am now, and I took it. But in the beginning, you have a lot of freedoms, a lot of choices, and you need to really think about, the first year or so that you're going to be saying, there's going to be times where you're going to be saying, do I really want to do this forever? Mm-hmm. And yet you need to decide, what's the best way to progress your career. Right? Sitting around and waiting for jobs is not the way to do it. Go out and, like they said, be good workers. Work hard. Somebody calls me for a reference. The first thing they ask is, do they get along with other people, and are they hard workers? You check boxes, and you'll be fine.
Learn the unemployment system in your state.
That's just really good advice no matter what field you're in, really. I mean, it is kind of scary when you're getting ready to graduate. I know when I was getting ready to graduate, I was like, what am I going to do? I wasn't continuing in school, and so I ended up getting my degree I got my license to sell real estate because I thought, well, this is something I can do for a couple of years until I figure out what to do. And it is scary graduating college, and because you have this bubble, in Athens especially, I think, you kind of live in this bubble of this, utopia of college life where you get loans and you get money to buy stuff and have fun with your friends, and then you realize that those loans have to be paid back, and you leave and you have to figure out how to pay your bills. So don't be afraid to grow up and be an adult and come up with a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan of, maybe I can do CRM for a few years. The majority of people don't do CRM long term because it is really hard work. Or if they do, they move into more managerial positions within a firm. So don't be afraid to network and come up with a long-term plan.
But Jamie's totally right though, and he actually specifically talked to me through our first project ending crisis of that I've ever had being in the field, because we were on UMTP, both our companies, and it was super weird because the last few months we would get calls from the office one day tell everybody to go home, and then a call from the other office actually don't tell anybody that and I remember me and my friend Pat, who also did this field school, were just freaking out, what do we do, because the project's ending, we need other work, but are we allowed to leave ASC? And Jamie was yes. If you're part-time, you got to be a mercenary, you have to be pragmatic. It's one thing to be in the middle of a project and then just peace out in the middle of a session and not tell anybody, that's uncouth, that's not okay. But if a project's ending and you're listen, I have another opportunity, I need to go where I can make money, no one can fault you for that because you're not full-time. Give me a full-time position, or you don't get to talk about loyalty because that's not what this field is about.
I feel like I went a different route if we're just going to turn this into a CRM roundtable. I stuck with one company. I worked for a couple other companies one or two projects here and there. But I was lucky. The company I started with, they just always had work, so I just stuck around, and I kind of became a fixture. Got in there, stayed in there, and then eventually I just moved to Cincinnati because I had a high school friend that lived in Cincinnati, and he was looking for a roommate, so I just moved there. And eventually it got to the point where the company just kept growing, and we kept getting bigger and bigger projects that I got hired full time, and now I have an office on the 18th floor overlooking Fountain Square in Cincinnati.
A lot of being in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Managing the opportunity that might be presented to you.
I have to say it's important to also, you got to know your own personal value and worth as an employee. And sometimes there are things that you have to walk away from. Like if it's just not a good situation or a good job and you don't feel like you're being valued, then, go somewhere where someone will value you, because that doesn't help with the work you're doing and morale and other things like that. And it'll just beat you down faster. So.
Yeah, or if you don't see much of a future at where you are, if you can see the writing on the wall and you want to be more than a field technician, you eventually need to leave and find another position somewhere else, because that's how you can grow your career as you want to. It requires moving around. So.
Other than some of like the technical skills that you guys have learned, there's a whole host of skills that we don't really stop and think a lot about. Communication skills, things like that are kind of secondary to what we focus attention on. How do you think that, what is the value you found, and where do you get that kind of training to use those skills, and in what ways do you think that students can better develop those kinds of skill sets that prove to be pretty important in careers?
I feel like you have to seek them out if you're not in a position where they're offered to you. So look at communications courses and other things like that. I was fortunate because my first master's degree is in nonprofit administration and leadership. So that's basically just like management and all these other things. So I had to work on public speaking and memos and all these other things. But you really got to go and seek them out for yourself, because as we continue in the future, so much of anthropology and archaeology is going to dip into the applied side, whether you do that full time or that's just something that you do on the side. If any of you are interested in like starting your own consulting firms and things like that, those are going to be really important skills in networking and stuff like that. So try and join associations or groups where you can get out and work on public speaking and interactions and things like that, because I'm actually really an introvert and I hate talking, but I had to learn to be functional and communicate in order to get where I am in life. So.
And there's even like archaeological conferences that you can go to. There are state conferences and regional and national conferences, and that's somewhere that you can even as a graduating alum of a university, you can submit papers to present at stuff like this, and that's where you can kind of if you don't have a lot planned for the next year and you want to really kind of feel out archaeology as a field, that's something that maybe you can do if you have a senior project that you have a really great paper that you can turn into a 45-minute presentation or something, or they're more like 25 minutes. But you can always submit papers, and then you network and you meet new people, and who knows, somebody might come up to you and say, hey, we're looking for people for this position.
Or if that's intimidating, really, at first you could start with just a poster presentation.
Yeah, there's lots of different things.
Students do that all the time. And basically you create your poster and then you stand there with it and you talk about it.
People ask you questions.
But it's real informal usually. So
Learn the value of using the phone. It is sometimes the most challenging part of my day as a millennial. I'm like, can I just send them an email or they're like, no, just pick up the phone and call them. And I'm like, I don't have that skill set anymore because we just text everyone. So that is really essential. And then don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Like Wayne National Forest is right here, so you can look up the people and say, hey, I'm interested in these things, and I was wondering, would you be interested in being a mentor to me or something like that? Because that's what, even in my job now, there are other people, and I'm just like, I see where you are in your career, and I'd like to be there one day. So would you like to do a formal or informal mentorship process with me so we can get together and then talk about the processes so I can learn more? So
I think at least my experience in CRM has been like you have to actively be trying to learn stuff if you want to learn stuff. Like it's real easy to sit back and just dig holes and be a shovel jockey. Like it's not hard, but like if you want to learn about geomorph, like you got to ask a bunch of questions. If you want to know like why we're digging on this specific part of the site, even though all the artifacts are over there, you got to ask that question because there's like all these different things that go in to these projects that the crew chiefs and the land agents and the PIs are dealing with that like if you don't ask, like you're never going to hear about it. Like you're just like forever in a vacuum digging holes. And so like, and I mean like if you want to like learn more stuff, like me and my roommate are always getting books and like doing research on like the regional archaeology of like wherever we're working, things like that.
Also, it's just going to add, any project that you do work on, pursue asking for the final report and read it. Like that way you have a full understanding of what part you played in it, but then the whole process, and do that as much as possible.
It's like crazy to see the difference between the paperwork you do in the field and what actually ends up in the report at the end.
And I think this is part of a broader picture that we try to paint for students, and that is the recognition that the skill sets you're learning right now, whether it's finding things through research, finding papers, articles, understanding and interpreting that information and that data, those are all things that don't stop when you graduate, right? You're constantly, and they become in a lot of ways, you're learning even more after you leave the university. And so I think just that constant process of learning is really, I think, lifelong.
It is. Basically, I don't do anything now that I do. The stuff I do now is everything I learned after leaving the It's on my own kind of picked up. It never stops, and it stops, and somebody's gonna pass you and do the thing that you thought you wanted to do. So you can either be stagnant and basically get left behind, or just continue building yourself, building your skill set.
Yeah, like the field school gives you the mechanical skills that you need to like do the job correctly. But like there's so many like social aspects to the job that you like need to learn to just like survive. Cause like you're in a field with these people for like 10 to 12 hours a day forever. So like sometimes you're digging with somebody for 3 weeks who like you actually hate, but like they do their job right and you have to like know how to work with them and communicate with them. You have to like be adaptable for situations to change all the time. Like last session I was in 4 hotels in 8 days for no reason. But especially also something I've like learned at this company I've been with this year is because it's a lot more like experienced techs than I'm used to working with. And everybody has a specific like different way of digging a unit level, but it always like comes to the same thing. Like one of my best friends on the crew, like the way she digs her levels like makes me cringe. But then at the end, it always ends up perfect. So like you have to be, and it's cool to like see that stuff because then you can like learn how other people do stuff and maybe like pick up skills to like make how you do something like easier.
Are there other questions that folks have?
Is anybody totally freaked out about graduating and like,
Yeah.
that's normal. That really is normal though,
Do you guys have any closing thoughts that you'd like to offer up?
I don't know. I guess I feel very proud to be part of 30 years of the archaeological field school at OU. I think it's It's great. I love that we have like a Facebook like group now where students and like Paul post pictures and stuff. Like it's cool to see what's going on with it. It's fun to come back and visit with students. Like, you know, I recognize a lot of you guys because I usually come down like once a year and visit the field school. So don't forget where you came from. As you go out into the world, remember that, you know, this is where I always tell young people this because I don't think very few people grow up and are 5 or 6 years old and say, I want to be a North American archaeologist. That doesn't happen a whole lot. I think that people find their passion for this in college. Here at OU is where you figure this out about yourself. So don't forget where you came from, and don't be afraid to use alumni. You know, join an OU alumni group wherever you end up. If you end up in a different city, see if there's an OU alumni group there. Whether they're involved in anthropology or not, they might just be a general OU group. Network with them. Figure out how that can be helpful to you. And do something you love, or at least something that you like a lot, I guess. Not everybody gets to love what they do, and I think the older you get, the more you become okay with saying, I don't love this, but I have a really good benefits package and a 401k. And that's okay to think about, especially when you get to be like 25, 30 years old. You got to think about that stuff too. You know, it's not all about running around and being crazy and going wherever you feel like. At some point, you've got to grow up. Somebody else has to say something that's depressing.
Okay.
I feel like I crushed their dreams.
I mean, I'm just like really grateful for the field school and like how Paul does it. And I just would want every new batch of kids to like fully take a minute to understand like how significant and like lucky you are that like this is the field school you're going through. Cause like this is stuff like we're making a record that doesn't exist yet, like in entirety. Like historically, this area is like under-researched and like undervalued because, you know, like we don't really care about the Native Americans in this country. But like we're making a record. Like it's cool to go do a field school in the middle of Rome, but like whatever you did, like everyone already knew. Like here, it's like finding people who like otherwise would have no voice and never have before. And like it's like a very, in my opinion, it's like a very small amount of like maybe like reparation. It's like so not adequate, but I think it's a cool kind of like, and it kind of goes along with like the mitigative thing in CRM too. But yeah, I just really like that you get to do the like local regional archaeology and that like the research part of it and like the fact that like we have to like read all this different material on local stuff like while we're excavating. All that stuff is really important because it like ties theory and concept together with like the actual dirt in your hands. And I think that's like really important and something that like you should experience before you get into the field because it's going to make you a better archaeologist.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
If I could make a comment as a non-OU person here as a spouse, friend, and guest, I think one comment would be the fact that you're sitting here. I don't know if you're getting class credit to be here or you're just voluntarily here. I mean, that's a good sign. I think you're going to be okay. And then I went to a very small private college called Juniata College in central Pennsylvania where there was one other person that graduated that year with an archaeology degree. So there's no network. I had to do everything on my own. I had to go out and find my own internship. No one told me about shovel bumps or archaeology fieldwork. I had to do everything on my own. So the fact that you have 5 people sitting in front of you that you can immediately walk up to and they'll hand you a business card. And then when you graduate in the spring, you can email or call that person and they will give you a job if they have a project at that time. I mean, that's pretty significant. And the fact that you're having this panel, I think, is a benefit to the students. And I think everybody's going to be okay. So.
And don't forget to pay it forward too. Like if you end up somewhere in the country that there isn't a lot of OU alumni, you can be a person, a contact person for potential generations of OU graduates that are behind you. So.
And Heberling Associates has been trying to do internships with Juniata College students. It's the local college, 10 miles away, so it works out. That has been really great with my experience. We don't have them work on anything that we have a budget for, of course, because we wouldn't feel right about that because we should be paying those people. But we've actually, people have gone from internships to paid employees, so it works. It's a good system, and if you find yourself there someday, you should try to do that for other students as well.
I want to thank all of our panelists for making the journey to Athens today, and I also want to remind everyone that tonight at the Southeast Ohio History Center at 5:30, Stacy Spertzel Black will be speaking on rock shelters in, I don't have the page in front of me to tell you the exact title. Yes, I do. Rock shelter archaeology and late woodland hunting patterns, a view from facing Mundy Creek Rock Shelter. So that's at 5:30 at the Southeast Ohio History Center. We also will have a small reception following that. There's also an exhibit at the History Center of artifacts that have been excavated by the Ohio University Archaeological Field School over the past 20 years, and particularly I know there's artifacts from facing Mundy Creek Rock Shelter, and there's also artifacts from the Patton 1 site. So be sure to check that out. And tomorrow, if folks have not already done so, we still have a couple seats available, I believe, for the community alumni and community visitive sites that starts at 10 o'clock. And so you can go onto our webpage and RSVP for that if you'd like to come along. We will have vans that will pick folks up down on the first floor of Baker Center, and we'll be driving out to some of the sites that we're hearing about and talking about. So. And then, of course, there are numerous other events going forward for the rest of the month of October. So make sure you check those out as we celebrate Ohio Archaeology Month. Thank you.